Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Now we know Russia's biggest red line, which is the moment they might be using nuclear weapons against, we don't know yet, possibly unfortunate Ukrainians or maybe someone else. And you don't have Russia coming out and telling you that, but we have Lukashenko. Alexander Lukashenko, the president of the country of Belarus. He comes and tells us that this is the red line, the biggest, because I think some other red lines were already crossed by Al Capone. So I think this is the latest red line. And by the way, I know the Russians, they are not kidding. Obviously, this is not coming from the Russians, comes from Lukashenko. But let's see when the Russians might be using nuclear weapons in Ukraine. So, unfortunately, we have two articles here. One is from CNN and one from the Russians, from Russia Today. Both are from October 6th, 2023. US pushing Russia towards using nuclear weapons by arming Ukraine, Belarus leader says. Interesting that they say leader and they don't say self-appointed or blah 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 president. Now, the problem is the distance, the missiles, how do you call it, radius, ability to hit, the distance, and it seems like the Russians, everything beyond 300 kilometers is a no-no. Why? I think it's because of the Kerch Bridge, among others. But let's read and see what's going on here. Belarusian president, bravo CNN, bravo. Lukashenko said Friday that by arming Ukraine, the United States is pushing Russia towards using nuclear weapons. And I'm quoting, I am getting the impression, I say again, that it is my opinion, that Americans are pushing Russians towards using the most terrifying weapon. They arm Zelensky and his army and provide long-range missiles. Even missiles able to fly for 300 kilometers, 186 miles, Lukashenko said during his visit to a military facility in the Brest region. Lukashenko added that if such a missile struck Russian territory, Moscow would have to respond. And I'm quoting, one such attack deep into the Russian territory and the response will be colossal. Otherwise, why do we need those nuclear weapons for? Question mark. Well, the Ukrainians hit deep inside Russia about 700 kilometers, if I remember correctly, and that was the airfield in Engels 2, which is about, I don't know, I think it was 700 kilometers or 500 kilometers, so it was way beyond the 300 kilometer Storm Shadow missile capability, or Scalp. And if you remember, they used those jet-propelled, they call them drones, built by the Soviets in the 1970s. And they were upgraded in 1990s and then again in 2006 or something like that. And they were capable of hitting it. And those are big missiles, like missiles. They were refurbished, put certainly some satellite communication and guidance system, and they hit the target. So they hit the target with those ones. So I don't know exactly Lukashenko what he's waiting for. He's waiting for a few missiles hitting what? The Kremlin, the Kerch Bridge, which I think is going to be a target. That will be doable, and I expect it to be hit. So it says, according to him, the fanning of tensions between the countries could lead to a situation when Russia, and I'm quoting, will take out the red button and put it on the table. He added the Americans didn't fear for their safety because they're across the ocean. Lukashenko comments came after Russian President Putin said Thursday it was possible to revoke the ratification of a treaty banning nuclear tests. Well, nuclear tests is one thing, doing it is a different one. So this is one article. I'm going to go to the other one from Russia Today. This is from the 7th October. I thought it was both of them were from the 6th, so these guys are a little bit late. It says here, Belarusian leader issues a red button warning. So Lukashenko says Russia could respond with a most dreadful weapon if the US gives Ukraine long-range missiles. They will give it. I think they will give it, and let's see what happens. They're gonna push it until they get smacked. Until then, they will not back off. The delivery of the US-made long-range missiles to Ukraine could lead to a nuclear conflict, he said. He said that American media reported last month that Biden administration had agreed to supply a small number. I'm going to just do a few things, not 3,000, not about 100, that's a small, okay, of attack MS rockets to Kiev. So they were missiles. But anyway, on Friday, Lukashenko said he believed that the Americans are pushing the Russians towards the use of the most dreadful weapon by providing Ukraine with long-range missiles. He says the same thing here. And he says, the fools, I'm quoting, the fools again think they will sit it out across the ocean. He remarked, adding that Washington was risking, and I'm quoting, dragging the whole world into this tough war. Well, maybe that's a reason why the Germans, I mean, it must be. Let's start with this. I don't want to say 100%, I'm saying 99% certain that the channels of communication between Russia and the rest of the players are open. That's no doubt about that. Do I have the evidence? From time to time they tell us that they communicated a month ago. They met in Turkey for the Azerbaijan-Armenia conflict. They meet here, they meet there. In Vienna they met again. So they are not only meeting face to face, I think they're communicating, because meeting is one thing, communicating precedes a meeting, right? So I think they're controlling this to a certain extent. And I think that the Russians say, if you do this, I'm going to do this. And the Americans again, if you do this, we're going to do this. That's the way I think it goes, the conversation. I don't think it's a political conversation. I think it's thuggish conversation, and it's direct. Like two thugs, squaring off in a parking lot. That's what I think how it goes. And sometimes they don't talk to one another for a few days, and then again they make contacts, low level contacts, and again they talk. They have to, because remember, they both or all can cause global destruction. So that's the thing. If you remember, Germany drags its feet in announcing sending its Taurus missiles to Ukraine. I said because they're afraid of this thing and being hit by Ukrainians, and the Ukrainians decide that they don't like the Germans tomorrow, which is very possible, being such a perfect government in Ukraine with so many people that are not corrupt, and they're afraid they could be hit with Taurus, with their own missiles. These are the two things. Yesterday I read an article saying that the Germans actually are afraid also that the Ukrainians will use their weapons in destroying the Kerch Bridge, the Crimean Bridge, which supposedly they can't destroy at this point with Scalp missiles or with the Storm Shadow, which go up to 300 kilometers. I showed yesterday in a video that it's about 300 kilometers from the Kerch Bridge, straight line to the border. I mean, where they fight the front, the line of contact between the Russians and the whomever fights on the other side. I'm refusing to say it's the Ukrainians, because I think it's not only the Ukrainians, unfortunately for all of us. So if they give us attack MS or they give them the Taurus, that would be a clear target. And the Ukrainians considered Kerch Bridge not in Russia but in the occupied territory, so they will claim again that is a legitimate target, being an illegitimate and illegal construction on its territory by a different even though people are using it. But it's okay, they do whatever they want. So will they use it? I said it from maybe the first 2 months of this garbage over there. The Russians could do this at one point if they're losing, or they get sick of it, or they don't like something like real bad, don't like it. They will just give an ultimatum. They will say, okay, this is a deadline, this is a red line, after this is this. And I think the Russians do it, good or bad, unfortunately. So they will say, if you guys do this, you have until this deadline right here to do this. Yeah, blackmail, whatever I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. If you come, if you invade my personal space, I'm gonna smack you. Okay, oh, you threaten me? I'm telling you what's gonna happen. So probably that's what this guy's gonna say. If you do this, by that, we're gonna do this. and then probably, unfortunately, the Ukrainians will be hit with this kind of weapon. I don't know if they will detonate it on a target or will detonate it on a, let's put it, more or less unpopulated area, like, I know, big field somewhere. Probably people will be blown out, some of them, unfortunately. As I said, just a warning, and say the next one, like the Americans did in Second World War. But the Americans were, anyway, they hit a city too, and they said, we're gonna keep going if you don't sign an unconditional surrender. We're gonna keep going. So they stopped at 2 because the guy says, okay, fuckers, all right, you're crazy, you wanna exterminate us or something? All right, let's discuss it. Why? Because they were also in contact with the Soviets, and they couldn't allow the Soviets to take over Japan. They invaded anyway in the Kuril Islands, in the Northern Territories, as the Japanese call it. So it was a fight again on who gets who. But we were afraid of that idiot, right? That he's gonna take over the world. Why? Because we want to take over the world. Unfortunately, there were 2 of us in the same time. So anyway, let's go back to these guys. And after they detonate one of those things, I hope not, that it doesn't get that point. Maybe the other guys get the hint. If they push it further, that's idiotic because it's mutual destruction. Obviously, they will talk tough and all that and point the fingers and try to lecture the world that these are criminals. We have to isolate them again and all that. But that goes without saying, even if the Russians don't do anything. If the Russians accept to be by Al Capone all day, any day, anyway, then that's the good boy right there. Let's pat it, get a little bit of sugar, and send him to the stables and wait for us to come again. Anyway, here it is, my friends. We have another article ready with an idiot called Stoltenberg, who's the secretary who picks up phones and appoints and makes schedules meetings. Stoltenberg of NATO, saying that actually this is not a provocation, it's not an escalation. So what if it's an escalation? We want to escalate it. I mean, the alternative is even worse. The idiot says that, yeah, we can escalate it, we can push it and see how far it goes, because the alternative is a doomsday alternative. I don't think so. I think the alternative is Jesus Christ is going to return. I mean, my scenario is more credible than yours. Okay, he's going to return, he's going to make peace, and he's going to love all of us, we're going to love everyone, and it's going to be like the old book, the good book says, you know, some people will eat the milk and honey of other nations. I know you don't like that, but just look at the Old Testament. It's black on white. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.